Alrighty, welcome back to another episode of RE Radar. Today's episode is going to be about what you're not really thinking about when you're buying or selling a home. It's not going to be the big stuff. We're not talking price, interest rates, or how many bedrooms you need, the obvious things. I'm going to be talking about the little things, the things you might assume, the assumptions, the stuff that it doesn't show up in a listing, but absolutely shows up in real life living in that house, because most real estate regrets, they don't come from a bad decision. It comes from a decision made with missing information. So today I want to walk through some of those more common overlooked things that I see buyers and sellers miss until it's too late. Now, first off, what I'm going to be touching on is location. And I'm not talking about it in the way of the neighborhood or what schools are in the area. I'm talking about location as in what the land was used for and what's nearby. For example, if you're buying next to a gas station, dry cleaner, or laundromat, there's a real good chance of soil contamination on your property. You likely have underground tanks, chemicals, and runoff all in that area around your home. So the house itself might be fine, but the dirt underneath your home may not be. Now, does that mean you should never buy a home next to a gas station or a laundromat? No, but it does mean you should be aware of these potential issues that your property may have, as perhaps down the road, those issues could become more apparent, or when you try to sell the property, it could come up as an issue. So just being aware of the potential hazards of buying land next to or near a gas station laundromat is key. The same could be said about buying an older orchard or former industrial land or properties near rail lines. A lot of this stuff, it doesn't show up on a casual walkthrough that you might do, and buyers by themselves would rarely think to ask about it until an appraisal or resale issue might pop up. Now, I'm not trying to make everyone paranoid here or anything, but it's always key to ask that one extra question before you fully fall in love with that house. Now, next up is the idea of noise. This is a big one, especially for sellers, as well, noise can be tricky because humans, well, we adapt, of course, and you tune things out. But buyers, well, they haven't adapted to them. They won't be tuning out any noise they see. So, some examples I see all the time could be a train horn, especially right near crossings. I mean, those train horns, they're not optional, they're federally required. And so they're always going to be blaring away constantly every day at some houses. You've got ferry horns or fog signals, super common and a real issue here in the Pacific Northwest. Fire stations, hospitals, all those, well, they lead to frequent sirens. And then some other things that you might not think about, garbage or recycling trucks that come in at 5:30 a.m. and perhaps the primary bedroom where you're going to be sleeping is right up against the alleyway where that truck drives by. So you're always hearing it, and it could be quite loud. Next, you've got school bells, playground noise, PA systems, even seasonal stuff like football games down by the stadium downtown, summer concerts, boat traffic. If you've lived there for years, you're barely going to notice it anymore. You tune it out. But a buyer, they're going to hear it once and start imagining it every single day, nonstop blaring, and be annoyed and not want to buy the place. That's why for buyers, I always encourage a buyer to visit a property at different times of the day, not just Saturday open house at noon, because you want to hear what it sounds like around the neighborhood in the morning, midday, at night, weekend, weekday, to get a fully understanding of that home. And then, of course, for sellers, well, just because something doesn't bother you doesn't mean it won't matter to the next person. Now, next up on the talking points we got is tenants, because, well, this can catch people off guard constantly, as if you buy a property with a tenant, that does not automatically mean you're going to get to live in it when you want. That's just not how it works, especially in a place like Seattle and some surrounding areas where tenant protections are very, very, very strong. A very pro tenant city Seattle is, and it can make it hard to get that tenant out of the home you just bought. It might not make much sense as you're like, well, I just bought this home. But if the tenant is in there and if the proper steps weren't taken to have the tenant evicted, then it could be a massive headache for this new buyer. In a place like Seattle, evictions can take months to maybe even a year plus. These notices, they have rules, and the timing for eviction notices are very key, And the process is, of course, often slower and much more expensive than people might expect going into it. Now, from the seller side, what I hear is, oh, the tenant will just move out when we sell. Well, sometimes they might, but other times they won't. And then sometimes they legally don't even have to. And so, from the buyer side, this is very key. If there's a tenant, you're not just buying the house, you're buying into a legal situation. Now, that doesn't make it automatically a bad purchase every single time. It just means you need to understand what you're stepping into before you close. Understanding in real estate is everything. Heck, understanding in life is everything, I say. Now, something else that people are often underestimating is how long everything actually takes. Selling a home doesn't start when you list it. It starts weeks, if not months earlier. We're talking repairs, prep, staging, photos. That can easily be 2 to 4 weeks to a few months, depending on the repairs and work you want done. Then there's the offer reviews, then there's mutual agreement, then there's closing, which is usually 30 or so days after the signing. So it very well could be a 3 month process from when you start working with a real estate agent to getting that home ready to sell to then getting that money wired into your bank account from the sale. Buying, it's the same. People assume they'll just look for the weekend, write an offer, and be moved in a month later. Easy, right? Boom, bam, wham. When in reality, touring homes can take weeks and months, if not maybe a year plus. Multiple offers or a stubborn seller that won't budge can cause you to end up writing more than one offer, perhaps, before getting one of those offers accepted. Appraisals, inspections, financing, all these add time to the transaction. And then, of course, you've got life deadlines like school, jobs, your current lease. Well, they don't always align cleanly with the transaction of that home you're trying to buy. Now, the actual transaction from when you go into mutual acceptance on a property and you close on that property, that might just take realistically 30 days, about a month. But the decision making process of buying a home and getting to the point where you're actually signing contracts is usually much longer than someone might expect who doesn't have the experience in real estate. Now, inspections, they're important, but they don't tell the whole story. They don't tell you how much winter sunlight the house actually gets, where the water is pooling up during heavy rains, how the neighborhood uses the parking, whether that shared driveway feels shared in practice, how aggressive or relaxed an HOA actually is. So, an inspection, it's great. I always recommend them. They tell you what's broken. It doesn't tell you how it feels to live in the said home. That's where the experience, timing, and asking the right questions before you're buying a home matter so much. Now, just wrapping up, when I say what you're not thinking about, I don't mean you're doing anything wrong. I just mean real estate, well, it has a lot of layers. And most of the problems come from assumptions, not from surprises. The goal isn't to overthink every house, it's to think one step further than what that listing is giving you. My job isn't just to help you buy or sell a home as quickly as possible, it's to help you avoid the things that you didn't even know about and you didn't even think you should be worried about. It's to help educate you on that process. And that's what RE Radar is here for as well, educating just the average buyer or seller on the home buying process and maybe help your transaction go a little smoother as you'll have a little bit of background knowledge. But that is all the time we've got for today's RE Radar. Once again, I am your host and realtor, Nathan Matheson. And if you ever have any personal questions, I'm always happy to chat. But until then, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Till next time, peace.